Hello friends, this is Luthien Brackett coming to you from sunny Surrey in England. I hope you are all keeping well and safe and that you're finding lots of fun and interesting ways to keep yourself occupied during this period of social isolation. Well, as we all know, it's important, even when following social distancing guidelines, to get daily exercise to keep our muscles fit and toned and strong. And the same thing goes for our voices. For singers, it's very important, even if you only have 10 to 15 minutes a day to warm up, that you do some vocal exercise regularly. That will keep your vocal cords supple and flexible and able to do all the things that you want them to do when it's time to get back to regular singing and performing. So I've been asked to share with you some of the vocal warm-ups that I like to do myself. And I have 3 good ones for you today. And the nice thing about these exercises is that they can all be done first thing in the morning before you've done any other singing. And they go in the order that I would do them myself, from most gentle on the voice to slightly more challenging. I have one recommendation for you, which is that whenever you practice, even if you're just doing vocal warm-ups, always practice with a metronome. There are all kinds of free metronome apps that you can download to your smartphone. I use one called Metro Timer. And I think it's very important because it helps keep you honest. When you're practicing an actual piece of music, it helps keep you in tempo, helps show you places where you might be inadvertently slowing down or speeding up so that you can learn to do it in tempo without going too slow or fast. And the same goes for warming up, especially when we're doing exercises that are designed to increase our flexibility when we're singing quite fast music. We always want to practice with a metronome to make sure that we are actually staying in time and that we can actually do it at the tempo that we want to do it. So the way to do that is to start at a nice, slow, easy tempo, one that you can do without feeling like you're struggling or feeling like it's too challenging, and then to challenge yourself. And as you start to become a little bit more comfortable with it and start to feel like you need a little bit more of a challenge, or you finally ready to get up to that performance tempo, then you can gradually increase the tempo of the metronome so that you can practice staying at a steady tempo. So highly recommend that. I use Metro Timer, but there are any number of free metronome apps available. And of course, you can just use an old-fashioned metronome if you prefer not to use modern technology. That's absolutely fine. So the first exercise I want to share with you is one that was taught to me when I was a baby alto, studying for my undergraduate degree at Westminster Choir College. My voice teacher was a wonderful mezzo named Zahava Gal, who's based in New York, and she taught me everything I know about singing. And the reason that I love this exercise is because it's very gentle, so it can be done very first thing before you've done any other singing. And also, it helps you keep the voice in alignment. It just starts you out right. So for me, one of the most important aspects of my vocal study and practice is to try to maintain a very smooth connection between my chest voice and my head voice, and making sure that you don't hear a dramatic change in timbre from top to bottom. And that's something that I try to work on a regular basis, and maybe this will be helpful for you too. So some of you may be familiar with a type of warm-up that's popular nowadays among singers that involves singing through a straw. This has a similar focus and efficacy, and you can do it without a straw. So it requires singing through a very, very small round opening between your lips. So almost a hum, but not quite. So you get a very, very forward and buzzy sort of sound, like so. Right? So if you sing just a regular oo vowel, ooh, but then close your lips and focus the sound a bit more so you get a brighter, buzzier sort of sound, that's what we're looking for. Ooh. So it feels like you're singing through a very narrow opening, sort of like if you were singing through a straw. And if it helps you to imagine that you're singing through a straw, then that's great. So let's start on a lowish pitch. You can start wherever you choose, but lower in your register is advisable. So you get the idea. The most challenging bit is finding that forward placement and that nice, bright, focused sound for the. And once you've found it, the lovely thing about it is that it helps keep the voice focused in exactly the same way as you come down the scale, so that there's absolutely a seamless transition between your head voice and your chest voice. It helps keep everything in a nice, high, focused, resonant place. And what you'll notice is when you're doing the in the proper way, and you can do it with a straw, as I mentioned before, if you like, if you find that it helps you to find the right focus and placement. What you'll find is that there's very little pressure on your larynx. It actually feels really relaxing, almost like a vocal massage, because you're having not to work very hard at all. That's the goal. And the next exercise that I'd like to share with you, my current voice teacher shared with me, and I find it really, really good. It's another great exercise to do before you've done any other singing. And the way it starts is with a kind of a hissing sound, a long S. Sa, sa, sa. And what you're doing is you're using the S. The S is a little bit like the focused, because it brings everything forward and it focuses your energy into your mask, right? Which is where we want a lot of our vocal resonance to feel like it's coming from. Because what we don't want to do is put too much muscular pressure on the larynx, right? And what I like about this exercise is that in addition to helping focus the voice first thing in the morning, you start on a higher pitch. So whereas a lot of vocal exercises start from the bottom and work their way up, this one starts from the top. And I think that's important because I think what we generally want as singers is to bring more of the lightness and focus of our head voices into our chest voice. If we start in a chesty place and too low in our registers, then what we tend to do is we tend to bring that weight up as we go, and we tend to expend too much muscular energy and place too much pressure on the larynx. So what I like about an exercise that starts up high is that it doesn't do that. You start high and the goal is to stay high, right? So I'm going to start on a pitch that's sort of middle to high in my register, and I would suggest you do the same. You can start wherever you feel comfortable. Sa, 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 o. Sa, 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 o. Sa, 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 o. So you get the idea with that one. Just remember that the sa is there to focus the sound. And the reason I do it 3 times before I do the scale down is to give myself an opportunity to listen and adjust and make sure that resonance is where I want it to be before I move my voice. And finally, I have an exercise to share with you that is for flexibility. So if it's first thing in the morning or it's the first time you're warming up in the day, and let's say you're going to be singing a Handel piece with lots of coloratura, lots of runs on a single vowel, this can be helpful for increasing flexibility and speed. And this is one you definitely want to do with a metronome. You want to start slowly and work your way up in speed. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, most of my focus when I am practicing is to try to make sure that there's a smooth transition between all my registers so that it's not clear to the listener when I'm changing registers. And that's what I like you to focus on too. No matter what your voice part, it's a very, very useful goal. So this one starts out gently and then gradually you increase the difficulty level so that you're singing very fast notes in a more articulated way. But you always want to start with the principle of making everything smooth from top to bottom. So here's how it goes. You start out, ah, 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 ah. So you get the idea, but that's the goal. The goal is to start with a very smooth, sort of siren-y sound between all of the notes so they kind of smear together. You don't want too much articulation in the beginning. And then as you start to articulate the different notes, you want to keep that feeling of smoothness. You want to help that translate into the more articulated singing so that the articulated singing is nice and in tune and it doesn't sort of each of the individual notes doesn't change timbre as you change registers in your voice. So let's try that again. Ah, 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 ah. And again, do that one with a metronome. And if the tempo that I just took just now was too fast for that last bit, take it at a slower metronome marking, as slow as you feel comfortable with, and just gradually increase the speed until you feel more comfortable. I know in the beginning it might seem like an almost insurmountable task, but trust me, with practice, it gets easier and easier and easier. I hope you enjoy these warm-ups. It's been my pleasure to share them with you. Keep singing and stay well. And I look forward to making music together again as soon as possible.